Jim, and this is the second in an installment of farm preservation series that the Campbell Conservancy, the Campbell County Conservation District, and the Campbell County Extension Office are collaborating to put together to help you all understand and think about ways of preserving your farm and passing it on to the next generation. Tonight, we have David Marrison from Ohio coming in. He is going to talk about communication within the family and how family dynamics can affect that communication. If you like what he has to say, he's putting on an online seminar starting in a week or a week and a half. And that's an hour and a half once a week for 4 weeks. It does cost. It costs about $100, but the Campbell County Conservation District will reimburse you that money. So if you like what you hear, sign up for his course. He'll go into greater detail, and then just submit your payment receipt to the Conservation District, and they will cut you a check, and it'll show up in about a month's time. I'll remind you of all that at the end of tonight. So without any further ado, I'll introduce David Marrison from Ohio State. David, thank you for coming. We're all looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. I don't need that. Well, good evening. All right, we have to work better than that. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good. Well, pleasure to be here in Kentucky. The last 3 nights I've been in West Virginia teaching, and then got to drive over through that storm today and to be here tonight. So before you can see my title, Having Fun with Family DysFUNctionality. To put fun into some dysfunctionality. It's a course I was asked to teach at a wine and grape conference, so I kind of put a little twist on it to be here tonight. But I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, just so you know who I am, where I'm from, and my quest of why I even teach in this area. So in the upper left-hand corner would be my grandfather's farm. That was a wheat milk cows, 50 cows, up until 2010. Now, as you can see on the front side of the picture, we're a complete hay and corn and soybean operation. Our family has 500 acres there on my grandpa's farm. That was a 70-acre farm that my grandpa started. And you can see where that is. It's clear up here, and I won't work on that, clear up in Ashtabula County. So anyone been to Ashtabula County? Why were you in Ashtabula County? Just driving through?
Yeah.
Usually you have to drive through if you want to go see Niagara Falls. So that's how we catch you. But we have actually, in Ashtabula County, my home county, there's something like 18 covered bridges. The longest and the shortest covered bridge in the United States, right in Ashtabula County. Somewhere like 18 different wineries there. That is the heart of the Ohio wine country. So if you want to drink good wine, you have to go clear up north. But people don't come there because during the winter, it's usually over 100 inches of snow. So that is how I grew up, is in the snow belt country. And I went there, and then I was in ag and 4-H and decided I wanted to be a teacher, so I went to Ohio State. And then I decided I got my degree in ag education and economics, and I wasn't ready to start working, so I went to the Walt Disney World Company, which you won't see up there, but I worked in the land pavilion as a horticulturalist, growing crops there in the Epcot Center, which was a really cool experience. I didn't know anything about horticulture, but they needed someone to give the backstage tours of the greenhouses, and that's what I did a lot of, was to give the behind-the-scenes tours, and then they taught me horticulture on the side, which was then very important because I went to Purdue University, worked on my graduate work there, and then I taught high school agriculture in western Indiana for 5 years in a little town, and we had greenhouses there. Anybody seen the movie Hoosiers? All right, the basketball movie, great flick. A lot of my kids, their parents were extras in that movie because some of the barbershop scene and all those scenes from it, where they're driving the bus along the roadsides, that was in Montgomery County. That's not where Hoosiers originated from, but that's where they did a lot of the filming. And then after that, the county agent that I grew up with up in Ashtabula County retired, and my mom said, if you want to be back in the extension world, you have to apply now because it's a job that comes open only every 30 years. So in '97, I went back home to be the county extension educator. You'll hear through some of my stories. I was there for about 22 years. And then I moved to Coshocton County, which is, anybody been to Coshocton County? Okay, so want to see the canal boats or the old village, or an old canal town. We have 3 rivers that go through the county. But really, our claim to fame is that everybody wants to come there to shoot Bambi, because we're the #1 deer capital in Ohio, and we're in the middle of that foothills of what we would call the Appalachian. And you can see there, I got a little baby goat, just because everybody loves baby goats. We don't raise dairy cows anymore, but on our farm in Coshocton County, we raise meat goats. So we have a small farm, raise meat goats, and there you can see a picture of the cows. So I was county agent for Extension for 25 years, then November 1st I transitioned to a field specialist in farm management. So my true love for teaching is farm succession, estate planning, taxes, business planning, and anything financial. So now that's what I get to do full time, and we just started a new farm management, farm financial management and ag policy center at Ohio State University. Kind of stepped into that role to lead that institute, get it off and running so we can. Ohio State has not been as good as we should have been helping our producers in farm management. So by the end of my career, I want to make sure that we get that revitalized and straightened out. So a little bit of a background of myself, where I come from. So here's my objectives. To examine some of the dysfunctionality which is present in family businesses and family business transition. Share some strategies to manage farm family dysfunctionality. Now, I mentioned that I teach these workshops, so we have a workshop that is more in depth. So really, if you want to stay here till about midnight, I'm comfortable answering questions all the way up to midnight to go through this. Usually we'll go through staggered steps of farm succession planning, about passing on the farm to the next generation, which includes how do we talk about it as a family. And then we hand it off to our agriculture attorneys, who then will tell you how to craft your plan to meet the needs of your family. So specifically, I'm kind of filling in here. Last time you had an attorney talking about some of the ways to do. How many of you were here for it's Mr. Quarles, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about some of those things with that. So I'm kind of jumping in ahead of Dr. Isaacs from UK, who's going to come in February 11th. I have a screenshot of that. And he's going to go kind of that step about going through and talking about the whole farm transitions that happen here in the state of Kentucky, but also about how you actually go through that with your kids. So I'm kind of slotting into that communication section here. That's kind of my portion. But that said, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions that you have that come up. The last thing I want you to do is leave with a question that wasn't answered tonight. So if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you that. If it's an attorney answer and I can't practice law because I'm not an attorney, I'll tell you, maybe here's a couple things that you need to go talk to your attorney about and kind of give you some tips on that. Fair? Okay? So Jim mentioned about the planning for the future of your farm. The go.osu.edu/farm succession, that's the website that you go to. But it's January 23rd and 30th. You see me, you just see me on a computer. And then the February 6th and the 13th is our ag attorney, Robert Moore, who grew up actually in Coshocton County, where I live. And he's one of our agriculture attorneys for Ohio State as far as helping farms. I think we have one of the best ag resource law programs in the country, and that's Robert's basically full-time job is to help farmers work through their farms, estate and succession plans in Ohio. And I don't want to be remiss to give a plug for the program that's coming up on February 21st. That's your next program, right, Patty?
Yes.
I see how fast I can steal that off your website. Stole the flyer off your website, grabbed your picture. I don't know where that is. I'm assuming it's Campbell County here.
Not really sure.
I'm hoping somebody's farm. But that session's going to be on February 21st. Not here. It's going to be actually at the Campbell County Environmental Education Center. I've taught a lot with Dr. Isaacs from Kentucky. He's top notch. I encourage you to come back, get your information tonight, and then come back and listen to Steve there on February 21st. So, and if you want to sign up for that, Patty's the lady that you see for that. All right, dysfunctionality. So we might as well just start with a definition of that. When I go to Merriam-Webster's, it says an abnormal or unhealthy interpersonal behavior or interaction within a group. Can you think of any group in our country that might fit that definition right now? Not saying that you just have to go a little bit east, right? Okay, so then I wanted to, again, talk about this dysfunctionality, the condition of being dysfunctional. Great. Well, now that's dysfunctional mean. This is from yourdictionary.com. Dysfunctional is something that is flawed and doesn't operate correctly, or someone that deviates from normal and accepted social behavior. So my question is, do any of you have dysfunctionality in your families?
Yeah.
Okay. This is why I teach. My quest, my whole goal in life has been, over the last 25 years, is to find a family that is more dysfunctional than mine. And I am still traveling, trying to find that family. In fact, someday I'm going to write a book. So if you want a chapter in my book, all you have to do is talk to me, and I'll gladly put your dysfunctional family into that book someday. But this is what got me intrigued about this discussion about farms obsession, and I'll share you some of the things that happen. So every family, this is what I've come to know, is every family, especially those who work in a family business, are in some ways dysfunctional. I think if you tell me that you're not dysfunctional, I would love to come and sit with you around a kitchen table and talk to you, because I bet there's some dysfunctionality that might be occurring there. So there's this dysfunctionality. Sometimes I feel like this lady when I do these. Who is she? Here's your quiz. Anyone who has seniority in this room better know who this is.
Is she a lady from Nixon's administration that erased the tapes?
Oh, that erase the tapes?
No.
No.
Okay.
Someone said Ann Landers. I'd like to say you're right, but you're wrong.
You're out.
However, you're so close because it is her twin sister who is Dear Abby. Now, that's not her real name. This is her pen name, right? She took Abigail Van Buren. So Abigail is her favorite lady figure out of the Bible. So she picked Abigail as her first name. And then for Van Buren as the last name for her pen name, she chose her favorite president. How many people have ever said Martin Van Buren was their favorite president? I think about that every time when I see that, right? But some of you might have family that has maybe cut out a Dear Abby article and slapped it up on the refrigerator. Because sometimes this is the spouse trying to teach her husband something without telling him, but just cutting out a Dear Abby article and putting it on the fridge and hoping he stops and actually reads it. So there's some that I pulled out of some of my grandma's stuff, but I can appreciate you can't read those. But I want to read this one on the right, because this is, if you read Dear Abby, you knew she had a certain flair and a certain style to sometimes speak the truth in a manner that wasn't so compassionate. So, two men were claimed to be father and adopted son, just bought an old mansion up the street. We've noticed very suspicious mixture of company, coming and going at all hours. Blacks, whites, Orientals, women who look like men, men who look like women. We even saw a nun and a priest go inside. People come to this house in everything from motorcycles to Cadillacs. This has always been considered one of the finest sections of San Francisco, and these weirdos are giving it a bad name. How can we improve our neighborhood? So you know what Dear Abby's response was? You can see that because you're close enough. Yeah. You could move. Like a blunt like that, right? So as I go through these workshops across Ohio and other parts, I always feel like I'm Dear Abby. So if you want to know who is the modern day Dear Abby, right there she is. That's Jeannie Phillips, who is her daughter. So some of if you still read print, you will still see Dear Abby in print, but you're more likely to see it online. So Jeannie is still writing under for her mom, and that's her. So here's Dear Extension. So this is I once said, should I say Dear David? Now, one thing I'll know is you won't remember who I am at all. At all. You probably won't remember my name. You might remember someone who might have been from Ohio. But if I do my job right in these programs, I hope I'm almost like the Princess and the Pea. Right? The Princess and the Pea, right? I would encourage, it's a nice parking lot out here, so I can't hardly use this example, but usually I would say grab a rock out of the driveway when you leave the program and put it in the bottom of inside your shoe, and I want you to walk on that for the next week. And that's what I hope I am to you, that little pebble in your shoe. Don't remember who I am. I want to be that little voice in the back of your head, like gnawing at you to do some farm succession and estate plan work. So as you're driving down the road, you're going to hear my voice, or you're going to hear something on the radio. That's my goal. I want to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable tonight. Because if you're uncomfortable enough, you might do something about it, right? So I'm trying to share some stories, share some deer extension stories along the way, and be happy to answer any kind of questions that you have. But if you have a deer extension crazy thing that you want to give me, you can email it to me. You can give me a sheet of paper before I leave. I'm intrigued. Anything that I share tonight is probably real life. It is a real life example. So let's talk about family dysfunctionality. So I had to think about, okay, maybe my family wasn't the first dysfunctional family in the world. Maybe there was a family that was dysfunctional before me. So I think I found it. Two brothers farmed together. One was in charge of the sheep. The other tended the crops. The cropping brother was jealous of his livestock brother. Tensions arose, and he ended up killing him in one of their crop fields. Cain and Abel, right? You don't have to open up the good book and go very far to find the story of Cain and Abel, right? So dysfunctionality when it comes to family businesses, it's been with us from the beginning. So why should we expect our families to be any different? If it happened to Cain and Abel, I hope you're not killing each other though, right? But we're going to do enough stuff to irritate the heck out of one another, right? So what can cause dysfunctionality in farm families? What causes this? You don't look ahead because I have some there, right? But last night they handed them out, and I said, yeah, I have to make you work. Okay, what causes dysfunctionality?
Death and money.
Death, money. Can I throw the word greed in there at the same time?
That has to go right in the middle somewhere.
Hand to hand. Okay, so death and money.
Communication.
Family communication. That's why I'm here, right? Let's talk about communication.
Communication about death and money.
Communication about death, money, communication about politics, communication about religion, communication about anything on Facebook now, right? It's hard. What else causes dysfunctionality? And it doesn't have to be about your family. Say it's the neighbors.
Sibling rivalry.
Okay, sibling rivalries. I am a twin. So I have had 13 minutes of silence in my life. I got out first. We were 3 weeks early. I couldn't stand it anymore. Boom, I was out. So sibling rivalries, and there's 3 of us in our family. I have an older sister. Mom brought the twins. You know, twins, they light up the room, right? Because, oh, look, you have twins, blah, blah, blah. My sister hated it. She looked at us the first day we walked. Mom carried us in and said, where'd you get them? Then said, take them back. She would have been perfect as an only child, right? So good one. What else causes dysfunctionality? Jealousy. So it could be jealousy about a lot of different things, right? It's tough as a twin, right? When you're in school together every day, so there can be things that happen.
Varying goals or objectives.
So different goals, especially in a farm situation. I may have different goals than my brother or my sister I farm with, or my parents that I'm farming with. Good. What else?
Doing it the same old way.
So doing things always the same way and getting the same result may cause some stress. Okay, good. Others?
Work ethics.
Differing work ethics. You're going to love my first story then. Okay, different work ethics. What else? You get them all? Or you said, I'm in public, I can't say that because I see the camera rolling and I see that it was me. I hope my sisters never come to a program that it was all I can say. So dysfunctionality, what can cause dysfunctionality? In farm transitions, usually we talk about death. The problem is that the stress that death causes in a family, and especially in a family business, can really throw things off. But here's some that I've received from other groups. So let's just visit with them for a second. Work takes priority over family. Does that ever happen in a farm family? I was taught that you make hay when
Sunshine.
shines. If I'm a boomer in this room, a baby boomer, would you ever quit baling hay in the middle of the afternoon to go into town and watch a child's softball game? Oh no, that's crazy, right? However, do you know that millennials and the Z generation will stop in the middle of the day? They will stop in the middle of planting to go be with their family and then come back later and do the work. So does that cause dysfunctionality? Oh, my grandpa would. Our rule was nobody goes home until everything's done, and nobody eats until the cows are fully fed and bedded, right? And then he also said, would you ever sleep like that? They had sleep on a perfect bed of straw, okay? Interplay of business and personal finances. So we talk about farm finances. A lot of the times, you know, of course, if it's a bad year, do we have as much income to take into the personal side? No. No, worse yet, we don't have separate checking accounts for our business and our personal accounts, and they're blended together. So there's such a mishmash. We don't know, is the business making money? Is the business not making money? How much do we actually take for family withdrawal? Fatigue or health issues, do they cause dysfunctionality? I tell you what, when I'm not feeling good, am I the same bright, chipper self? No, you may not be. So health issues can cause it. Family conflict, sibling rivalries will jump in there. Can divorce impact a family? Absolutely, right? Dependencies, issues. I'd like to talk to you about hurts, habits, and hang-ups. So in estate planning, hurts, habits, and hang-ups are something that you need to talk about, right? Last night I asked the group, the question was, is it fair, if I have 3 daughters, is it fair that my 2 oldest daughters get their inheritance when I pass away, but the 3rd one doesn't get their inheritance right away? And the reason is because they have a hurt, habit, or hang-up, which would actually do what? Spiral them out of control. So this is a farm family in southern Ohio. Dad and mom have in the will that the 2 girls will get their inheritance right away. And then the 3rd daughter will get hers. It's going to be put into a trust, and she will get 7.5% on an annual basis. If they did their math correctly, she'll be able to live till she's 92 and still get 7.5%. And if she passes away, then per stirpes, it goes to her kids. Actually, mom and dad sat down with, usually we do that and we don't tell the kids, right? Mom and dad sat down with her and told her, and you know what her response was? Thank you. Thank you, mom and dad, because you know that would, I couldn't handle it. What's cool is they talked to each of the girls about it. Each one of them talked about it, and then it's all clear, so they know how they can help their sister in the future. So I thought that was pretty cool. Are there differences between political, religious, generations, and work ethic? Yeah, you mentioned that, right? There's differences for that. Different visions and goals for the future, that was mentioned in the back. Lack of clarities of roles and responsibilities. What could be a frustration, especially for the younger generation that comes back to the farm? They really don't know what their role or what they're allowed to do. How long are they in the low man on the totem pole before they get to move up? You know, there was the farmer in northern Ohio that is excited that he finally gets to manage the farm because his 96-year-old dad just passed away. So how old do you think he is? 76. Should someone wait till they're 76 to have some type of managerial impact on that farm business? But it does happen, right? Lack of defined transition plan, like how is this plan actually going to go over? When Dr. Isaac is here, he's going to talk about putting that transition plan together, some of those steps that you can do. I'd encourage you to have that transition plan. Even if none of the kids want to come back to the farm, we talk in our workshops about I can either train the kids to be a farmer, owner, operator of the farm. That means I have to teach them everything that they need to know to do the farm work, right? And I would say that's what I learned on my dad's hip. I learned how to bale hay. I learned how to manage cows. I learned how to do the soil testing, fixing fence, all those things I needed to do because it was right beside him. Now, maybe your children are not going to be the owner-operator. They're going to be the owner-landlord, right? So now they may own this beautiful farm in Campbell County. Are they actually doing the farming? No. Somebody else is doing the farming, right? It's still a farm. And in farmland preservation, I think that's one of our goals, right? To maintain that farm as a farm, not as a subdivision. If that's in our family's goal, it's okay, cool. We'll keep it a farm, but does that mean I have to farm it? No. Does that mean my girls have to farm it? No. But if they don't want to do it, then my job is to school them. My goal is that my girls better be the meanest SOB landlord that ever walked the face of the earth, right? But what do you need to know as a landlord? I need to know what the average land rental rates in this county are. I need to have a relationship like with my extension educator so they can help me with that rental rate. That I know how to write a land lease. That I know how to read a soil test, right? Because then the person that is actually farming the ground, are they mining the equity out of the ground? Or are they being a good steward of the resource that they're farming? How do I rent out the buildings? So that becomes a different conversation, right? Lack of retirement funds. How much will Social Security pay the average couple in America in 2023? Does anyone know off the top of their head? Just a tick over $2,900 a month. Close to $1,900 a month if I'm an individual. So if I'm a family that is living on $70,000 a year, if I do that calculation out, that means Social Security is going to pay for about 51% of the retirement that I need. I understand that farmers are really good tax mitigators. We hate paying taxes. We'll do anything that we can not to pay taxes, which means we may pay into Social Security. We may get our quarters built up, the 40 that we need, but on average, are we going to get what our neighbor gets when it comes to Social Security? So instead of getting 50% of our income from Social Security, which it was never intended to give us 100% anyways, now instead of 50%, I'm the family that I only get 25%. So where do I get the rest of the money from?
The land.
From the land, right? So when my grandfather retired, my mom and dad, who were running the business, to help my grandfather's retirement, they gave him a monthly rental check. Gave it every month. Here's the rent. Here's the rent. Grandpa lived a long time. My mom would tell you that they would have been better off to gone into the bank when he retired, borrowed the money, paid him for the entire farm, and then they would have had none of the family explosion that happened when Grandpa died and the estate plan came down either. But my mom would tell you, if she was here in this room tonight with you, she would say she paid for the farm 3 times over because of the lack of retirement plan. So that should be part of the discussion too. How, I have a young person working back in my operation, the one thing I should be doing is plugging stuff into their retirement and thinking about how I'm going to retire. And then relationship of family business members and those family members that aren't in the family business, I would call it in-laws and outlaws. How do we negotiate each other? So no one is, you've been to Ashtabula County. Is anybody related to anybody in Ashtabula County before I give this story? Nobody? You swear? All right. Here's Levi. Here's Clara. And there's a woman named Ida Mae to the right. You notice I took their names off so you can't remember who they are. Levi, Clara, Ida Mae. Ooh, this could be like those 50 Shades of Grey, right? I have 2 women there. Now, what happened? Clara passed away. Levi married Ida Mae. Okay? So what would you do with this farm? So Levi is this farmer. He has 3 boys who are all married at this time. and he has a farm. So you came to this workshop. What does Levi do with that farm? He's got 3 boys who are all 3 married. Who do you leave the farm to?
They don't, they start dividing it up maybe.
To the new, leaving it to the new.
Okay, we have an issue number 1 that we have to address is that Clara passed away, right? And Ida Mae came into the picture. Oh, and I failed to tell you that she has 3 grown girls. He has 3 grown boys. What's that remind you of? The Brady Bunch, right? So how do you protect it? So Levi's a pretty smart cat. He and Ida Mae both, this is the early 60s, both signed prenuptial agreements.
Smart.
All right? So that the money stayed on both family sides, okay? So we don't have to worry about that. So we got that question answered. So who does he leave the farm to? Whoever wants it?
Does anyone want it? Do any of them take
Anyone want
interest
it?
in it?
One has to buy the other 2 out.
Want to buy the other 2 out because I'm going to split it equally between the 3 of them? All right, so I'm going to tell you what his goal, it comes back to what is your goal for the future of your farm? We cannot answer that question for anybody else. We have to answer that question for who? Our own family. If his goal is to treat each of the 3 boys equally, then he's going to split that farm equally between the 3, a third, a third, a third, right? If his goal was that I want this farm to be able to pass from generation to generation to generation as a working farm, does the equal thing work on a small farm sometimes? The answer is no. So his idea was, I'm going to leave it to the son, who's the middle son, who stayed on the farm operation. Worked for less money over time, worked on the farm operation, blessed both of the other sons with some inheritance. Is that fair? What do you think of his plan?
It's his plan.
His plan, so pretty good, right? What's the one thing he didn't do?
Take care of it.
Tell them.
Well, he took care of Ida Mae because she had life rights to the house plus all the wealth that they accumulated during their marriage. So those are good questions. I heard something else.
He didn't tell them what his plan was,
He never told any of them what the plan was.
or why.
So I went to this funeral. Everyone sniff, boo-hoo, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. You know, Levi's dead. Next day, the will's read. What happens?
More brothers.
Because this brother, particularly his spouse, thought that when someone dies, the law says you have to split it a third, and a third. So,
Doesn't the law say it goes to the wife?
well,
I mean, they had prenuptials, but
they had a prenuptial, but in the state of Ohio, anything that was acquired before the marriage would stay in the line in our state.
okay.
So
But in the
that's-
Commonwealth, it goes,
It would probably go to
Spouse.
the spouse.
yes.
So, like in our state, it follows the accumulated inheritance and that before stays with that part of the family. So there'd be a good
All of
difference.
that's without the lack of a will, though. If you have a will,
Yeah.
the state doesn't.
So, he had a will, he had a prenup, he had it all set in stone, but the one thing he didn't do was communicate it. So this family, these brothers, boom, 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 have not spoken since 1996. Have not spoken to each other since 1996. This brother is now passed away, refused to go to his funeral, refused to even be written into the obituary as a brother. And the story could go on and on and on and on. So this is the kind of thing that will blow up a family. How do I know this story so well? Because I'm that young man right there. That is my dad who got the farm, which is the farm that you saw in the first picture. That's my grandpa. There's my grandpa, Levi. And my grandpa was the meanest, toughest man you have ever met. The hardest working man. But he demanded excellence out of everybody. And that's my grandma Ida Mae, who the only grandma I ever knew, who was just a diamond. She really was. But what do you think is happening to this cousin generation?
Same thing.
No.
They don't even know each other.
No.
Any guess?
I would say they probably started communicating to find out what the hell's going on, what happened.
All of us here in this generation, I don't think this generation's freaking screwed up.
They're all on Facebook, right?
Yeah. When I see my aunt and uncle, this is how weird our family is, right? We will talk like normal, nephew, aunt and uncle would ever talk. Why they won't talk, all of us cousins all talk. In fact, I own the farmhouse now, the grandpa's farmhouse. I had a bad experience with a renter. I hate renters. Because, destroyed my grandpa's house. So we redid the whole house. Grandpa's house is not rented out any longer. However, anytime any of the cousins are back home, they can stay at grandpa's house. They key in and they can stay there. That way they don't have to stay with their parents. That's pretty smart, right there. So our family, since 1996, can you imagine not having a Thanksgiving or Easter or Christmas dinner ever again? Since 1996, and that's okay, so maybe I should just wait with you guys, right? Yeah. Isn't that sad? But Grandpa, and I will tell you, we struggle as children. We struggle. I struggled with years with my two sisters. That's why we're going to talk about communication. My two sisters have not talked for a long time, and then my sister had her first grandson. Named him Levi because the guy wouldn't stop bitching when he was born. He was crying. They waited 2 days to figure out what to name this kid. And my niece said, it's got to be Levi because it's just like Grandpa Levi because she remembers him. And now that child has brought my sisters back together like you won't believe. So we're just waiting for that communication to improve. So that's why I'm here to talk about communication, about this, because I understand your family may be like my family. And I have always been on a quest like, how can I help? I'm the grandson that I own that farm now. I want to be a healer of what happened, not a person that continues to divide it. So how do I improve my communication? Because everything that I'm going to tell you, I would tell you I have stunk communication up. And I'm a work in progress. Work in progress every day on this communication. Kind of like McDonald's is a work in progress, right? Oh, wait, there it is. Try our new crap, right? I think it was supposed to say try our new chicken wrap. I want to say maybe it was truth in advertising. I don't know. Don't let worries kill you. Let the church help. So we talk about good placement of commas, right? Voice open, close. Turn left, don't turn left. Why are we so screwed up as Americans? So this is one county over for me, Lake County, Ohio, off of Route 20. Which side of the street is David going to naturally tend to drive on? You believe this? 60 and 50. This is on Route 20. This is up in Lake County. I don't understand. Or maybe you have this dog that you want to get rid of. Dog for sale. We'll eat anything, especially like small children. Just give us a call at 888-9999, right? So communication's we can't do it here. It's tough for us as farm families. I want to talk about communication just as, again, this could be like a 6-hour class just on communication. So we're gonna fly over the top of this, and I'm gonna try to give you some resources that you're able to go, some books and some other resources that if you have some issues with your family, you might want to buy it. Most will share 90% of what needs to be said. That's what we're great Americans about doing this, right? But it's the 10% that we don't say that we need to say. So I found this chart by John Powell, and I like how it puts it in levels, and I want to think about our conversations on how we interact as humanoids, right? We're all pretty good at level 1, right? Cliche conversations. Hey, how are you doing tonight? How was the weather today? It was rainy, right? See how cliche, it's safe, it's shallow, polite. If I want a conversation with any farmer, I'm going to ask you about the weather. We talked about the weather when you came in, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I must have felt some trust with you because it wasn't just cliche conversation. Because you're the chairman, you're the man in charge of the board, I knew right away that I could go to level 2, which is reporting facts, because when we talked about the rain, but then you also told me what?
The earthquake in Kentucky.
The earthquake in Kentucky. How much rain did you get today?
1.2.
1.2 inches, see? And that's a reporting of fact, right? So we will talk reporting of fact, like, oh, it's cold out there. In fact, it got to -4 2 weekends ago, right? And when that stat came through, it was -25 with the wind chill on top of my hill. So we will operate in level 1 and 2 pretty easy, right? Cliche, shallow, reporting facts. I think when I was a kid, level 3, we could talk about ideas and judgments, right? That's where risk starts. Because you start to put an idea or judgment out there. We joke about Facebook, right? Can you put your real truth, what you think about on Facebook?
Well, you
You
can.
get blocked.
Tread lightly, right? Because Facebook is, I think it's like America's emotional dumping ground and everything's like perfect. Anyone who says they're perfect on Facebook, I'm like, something behind the scenes going on. Something's up because you got the high pro glow on. Nothing's perfect like that on Facebook, right? But would it make a difference to you in this audience if I came in with some type of political hat on? Or if you saw a certain bumper sticker on my rental car out there? It would, right? So reporting facts, and then we're getting this about ideas and judgments. We start this conversation on farm families about ideas or judgments. When I came back to the farm, my dad has the county agent is milking his cows in the morning. So do you think the county agent who was hired by Ohio State could give some information on how to make that herd better? The answer is no, right? The answer is no, but I knew I had some ideas on how to improve things on the farm. And as kids, we spend our whole life figuring out how we make mom and dad think that the idea that we want was actually their idea, so they'll actually do it, right? So how do we talk about the things that we want, the ideas for the future of the farm? You all have ideas about what should happen to the farm. If your mom and dad were to ask you what you would think that they should do with the farm. In fact, that's probably a great exercise for you all. For those that have the wealth, that have the assets to then pass on to the next generation, have you ever asked your kids what they would do with that asset if they were in control of it? It's pretty cool to do that, right? I'll give you two. My mom, when my dad passed away, she gave us all 60 days to respond by email confidentially to her what we would do with the farm if we were in charge. So we all responded back to her. Do I know what my sister said? Don't have a clue. Do my sisters know what I said? No, I don't have a clue. My mom knows what each of us said. And then she took all those years of marriage with my dad. She read and reflected on what we told her we would do, and then she sat down with her attorney and crafted her plan going forward. Now, you would think that she would do everything that I said, right? My TT classes. She didn't. But the cool thing is, because some of the things that I did tell her, she came back, once she came back, David, that's stupid. That's the stupidest idea I ever heard. That's what you asked, right? So I was giving my idea. So see how just her response could have shut me down? Level 4 and 5. This is where, as humans, we stink. Where do we actually talk about feelings and emotions, where we actually can lay out how we're feeling to those around us? And then do you have the level 5 communication where it's open, honest, and you can tell that person everything that's on your mind and in your heart and in your soul? Okay, so think about the people in your life. Can you tell them everything in complete honesty? What's sad is I think a lot of us struggle to have even a spouse that we can get to level 5 with, or a friend. So do you have that open, and this is our goal, right? Open communication. Open communication. I'll give a quick story, because I have stories and they just come out. You know those things you put on a on a bed, these pillow things, and they're called throw pillows, right? Because you really don't use them. You put them on the bed, and then at night you throw them off the bed, only for the next day to do what? Put them back on the bed. How stupid is that, right? So we have these throw pillows on our bed, and they have this nice like flower print. They kind of look like a flower, but they don't have a flower head. Do you realize there's a top and a bottom to a throw pillow? I never knew that. So every day I would pick up those because we have a rule in the family, the person that's up last makes the bed. My wife likes to get up at 5 a.m. and do her morning reading and all that kind of stuff, so I always have to make the bed. So I'm taking these throw pillows off the ground, putting them back on the bed, and do you realize I was putting them upside down? And my wife thought I was just doing it to piss her off every day, right? So finally one day she says, David, can I be honest with you? She says, it really makes me mad when you put those pillows on, because I was making some comment about like, they're throw pillows, you throw them off, you put them on, you throw them off. And she goes, you know you make me mad every day. I said, why do I make the bed? I'm like being very servanthood, right? I'm making the bed. She goes, no, every day you put those stupid throw pillows on upside down. I have not a clue that there was an up and down to it. Moral of the story is she actually told me, or she could have gone on for the next 30 years thinking I was just trying to piss her off every day, right? So now when I make the bed, how do I put them on?
Correct.
In my younger years, I would have just. And she'll watch me now, and I go like, and then I'll slap them on there, right? But it's because she actually told me, or I would have never known that. Because men are stupid. We don't have a clue when it comes to half this stuff, right? So that was just since she actually had to be honest. So other barriers to communication in our families. We know farm, estate planning, succession planning is not easy to discuss, right? Because there may be some hurt feelings. I think we already put that one out there, right? Farmers are not known for communication skills. Would you agree with that? No.
Pete told you exactly what he thought.
So there's some that will just communicate to you, right? You know, or maybe you're like my dad, who is a dairy farmer, introverted. And the only person he wanted to talk to was the milk truck driver and the guy that came and bred the cow. Those two people he talked to during the day.
What about the vet?
And the vets usually get their ear chippered off by farmers because every one of us want to talk. It's just about a matter of when do we want to talk and then how do we recharge. Mixed role, I think, is where we struggle. We already mentioned about this a little bit. So let's say I'm back on the farm working with Dad. Which hat does Dad have on and which hat does David have on when we're business partners? Because as children, we are taught to what to our parents? Respect and obey. I was going to say annoy the crap out of them, but no, okay, we'll go the nicer way. Respect and obey, right? So Dad and I are farming together as partners in this farm business. This could be daughter. In our county, we have a daughter who's very successful with her dad on one of our big farms. When there's a 50-50 call, I say this way, they say this way, who gets to make the decision ultimately?
Dad.
It's Dad, right?
Yeah.
Because we revert back to what?
Childhood.
We revert back to childhood. And there are sons and daughters who have farmed with mom and dad for 50 years and never have felt like they are business equals. Why? Because we have all our meetings around Mom's kitchen table. Who's in charge? Mom. In the milk house, around the milk tank, who is in charge?
Dad.
My dad. So this whole mixing of roles like this, no wonder we don't like to work with each other, because as a child, we never feel like we're getting heard. And you really want to mess with a millennial and a Z, make them feel like they're not heard. So I have a millennial daughter and I have a Z daughter. Okay, they're 6 years difference, so they're bouncing between those 10 generations. If they don't get heard, that really hurts them. It hurts it more than a Gen Xer like myself. Because a Gen Xer, we'll just do whatever we want because we were raised by wolves anyways, right? Because we just raised ourselves, the Gen Xers did. So, farm languages. Do any of you refer to a farm from 3 generations ago? But nobody has lived on that farm for that name for years?
Oh, yeah.
So we'll say, hey, my late wife, I would say, hey, could you bring me a snack over? I'm over on the Loutman farm.
Yeah.
She drove around all day because the mailbox never said Loutman farm. It said Bruce Gravage farm. Or we had this thing, we ran heifers up north. In our family, up north. The heifers are up north. In your mind, where is up north?
Northerly direction.
Northerly direction, right? Well, in our family, you go a little snag north, but up north means you go up
Up and down?
north, but you go up west. So these heifers are technically up over west. When we say up north, whereas this is where the normal person would go, right? So we anticipate when we get married and you're up there smoochy in front of the whole crowd that all of our farm languages and that get communicated through that magical marriage kiss, right? And it's not. Then we bring in families, we bring in all these in-laws, we bring them into the family, and we're talking about 3 generations ago, and they have no clue what we're talking about. And guess what? Nobody ever takes the time to make them feel like they can ask a question like, could you explain more about this? Are there differences in personalities? Some of you are probably strongly introverted. I mean, have you all done like personality tests? One of the most common ones, Myers-Briggs. Those are for us old people. And you would get a thing that would give you 4 letters, right? Some of you, if you've done like extension, we do Annie's, and they'll give you a color. You're either a gold, a green, an orange, or a blue. Okay? Anyone done? So there's disc surveys where you would do, so you would know what you are. I will tell you, I'm an ISFJ, and I am a gold green. I have no blue or orange in me. So if anyone who knows that, that means I'm very goal-oriented and very detail-oriented. I have no fun, and I don't care about anybody. But that kind of matches up with an ISFJ, because I'm an introvert by trade. And you say, well, how can an introvert get up and speak to people? Well, introverts can speak to people just fine. We're very comfortable talking to people. Problem is, you are sucking the living life out of me right now, right? You're sucking my energy out of me, and then what am I going to do?
Go recharge.
Thank God I got a 3-hour drive home, right? Because then I get to rebuild. One of the most important things that I did each and every day before I went to do my job when we were milking cows was I did the morning shift. Do cows talk to you?
No.
Not a bit. They're fed, they're happy. I milked. I had my quiet time. I got to process my day. And then, boom, I was charged up to go work for the people. So I just learned that was kind of the thing that I needed to do. So our personalities are different. I didn't mention on the difference between my dad and my uncle when they farmed together. My uncle would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he would work till 5 o'clock at night. So he worked a 12-hour shift, right? My dad could never get out of bed. He was not a morning person. So he'd get up at 9 o'clock, go to the barn, but he would do the evening milking. So he'd be working till 9 o'clock at night. So what's his shift?
12 hours.
On a dairy farm, this is like Cain and Abel, right? On a dairy farm, is that a good thing?
No.
Well, I have one brother who's doing what? The morning milking. I have one brother who's doing the evening working. They're working 12 hours. If they are at the same pace and speed, that's probably a good thing on a dairy farm, right? But the wives could not stand it, because the one wife would say, I can't believe your brother sleeps in every morning until 9 o'clock and he's not out to the barn. Where the other wife would say, I can't believe he's not out there at night helping you. So that's where the friction started to build and build. Not between the brothers, because the brothers don't care, but it's between their spouses. So that's just how we work. Some of your children might be up at midnight, where some of us like to be in bed at 8:30, right? And then up at 5. Are there differences between generations? How we communicate to generations? So my mom, my preferred communication with, I call her every day. If she needs anything, she wants you to email it to her. But everything to my mom is texting. If it's a email, if it's a fax, if it's whatever, she says it's all the same. My one daughter, if I text her, she responds immediately. What happens if I call her?
Won't answer.
She ghosts me. She won't answer. My youngest, I will text her, and she won't answer the text. But if I call her, immediately she picks up the phone. So those are just some, there's differences between generations of how we operate. I mentioned one of those about the work things, and any difference between genders. Who's brave enough to say? Darn right there is. There's big differences between men and women, right? There is a book. Has anyone read the Men Are Like Waffles and Women Are Like Spaghetti? Has anybody read that? Are you kidding me? You guys all live in Kentucky or something? Men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti. There should be a picture of it, right? Okay, good. So your homework to improve your marriage is you're going to buy this book for each other. This book will cost you about $5. So it's like you still have money left over to go out and get some ice cream afterwards. You want to know the difference between men and women?
Yes.
It paid me a lot of money to come here tonight. I can tell you that. There's a difference between men and women, the way our brains fire. So let me say that this is very stereotypical because I know we're all different, but men are like waffles because what is shape is the little things that you put the syrup in.
Square.
Little squares, right? So men's brains fire in compartment mode, compartment to compartment. I love the little squares on the back there on the January calendar because it kind of reminds me of, what's the shape of a paper? A square or a rectangle. What's the shape of a TV? A square or a rectangle. What's the footprint usually of a farm shop? A square or a rectangle. So men will go from compartment to compartment to compartment to compartment. That's how our brains fire, from one compartment to the next. So we will go into one compartment. When it's time to go to the next one, we will. And ladies, I'm here to tell you, the book will tell you, there is a compartment called the nothing box. The nothing box. All right, how many of you said, what are you thinking about? And the man says, nothing. And as a lady, I'm thinking what? Oh, BS. You're thinking about something. I know. Do you know what a man's really thinking about when he's in the nothing box? Nothing. Not a darn thing. And a woman will say,
How is that possible?
that is
Your
not
brain-
possible. So a man will always retreat. A man will always retreat to the box that he is most comfortable in and the most successful. So sometimes our box is the work box. Sometimes our box is the sports box, like college football, if you're in Ohio, right? And people are like dying up there because we lost, right? But that box we're very successful in. And we will retreat to the nothing box because we get an A+ there every time, right? A+, we're right there. Now, women are like a plate of spaghetti. So men, now this is when you listen. If you were to pull a noodle out of a plate of spaghetti, can you pull one noodle out of that without it touching something else around it? So if you start a conversation, ladies, is that really where you want the conversation to go immediately, the first thing that you start the conversation with? It's probably going to be 6 noodles away. And by the time you get to that 6th noodle, you've already lost the man's attention because they have drifted back into the nothing box, right? So part of this understanding each other is, and then you throw in your personality, is how can you give each other space to be who you are and to listen and to communicate? I have a real hard problem as an introvert walking into the door and immediately be getting asked what? How was your day? Blah, blah, blah. So the agreement in our family is I get time to go to the nothing box, which could be the recliner, and you just sit down and you unwind, you could doodle, you could read, and then after I sit there for a while, then it's incumbent on me to do what? I get back out of the box because I know exactly what does Emily want to do. She wants to tell me everything about her day. She wants to go through every noodle on the plate. And then I have to re-engage as a family. So this is where men and women have to engage enough to know where is the other person, where do they need to be, and then when do they retreat out of that plate or that box. So if you read that book, that's a real simplistic kind of overview of it. If you want to understand it, it really made a difference in our family because we talk in code of waffles, spaghetti, colors, those type of things. Our kids will actually typecast everybody. If they were here, my stepchildren would already have all of your color personalities already indicated because that's what we talk about, those kind of things. So if you learn more about yourself, then you're able to express yourself in a better manner to those around you. Has anyone ever gone through the Crucial Conversations training? Has anyone heard of Crucial Conversations? Okay, so I'm going to give you this is another book. It's called Crucial Conversations: How to Listen When Others Blow Up or Clam Up. Carrie Patterson is the main author on that, but I'm going to give you the quick overview of this, and it all deals with this. This is, I will tell you, one of the most difficult books to read. I had to read it 3 or 4 times, and then I had to ask my wife to explain it to me, to tell you the truth, some of the stuff. Because she actually went through this training when she worked for Abbott Nutrition and was able to kind of talk about this. But think about this. When you're having a nice casual conversation, you're in the pool of shared meaning, which is kind of casual. Our conversation about the weather at the very beginning was pretty casual and pretty comfortable. Now, we are designed as people that if things start to get a little uncomfortable, a little rough, we have this thing called fight or flight, right? And in that instance, if something's not going right, we're designed to send blood from our brain to where? Because we only have X amount of blood, right? So it has to take blood from some of our extremities and then push them to where? To here, here, right? Because I'm either going to fight you or I'm going to run, right? Have any of you said something in a moment of anger that you, as soon as it came out of your mouth, you say, crap? Your brain didn't engage and it went out of your mouth and there was no way you could go and grab it and bring it back? It's happened to all of us, right? So how do you respond when you're in a fight or flight or you're in a very tough conversation? You're in the pool of shared meeting. Things start to, your sister says something that makes you upset. You start to get out of this comfort zone and you're going to go one or two ways. One of those is silent. You'll withdraw. You'll avoid. You'll mask your feelings. They'll say, what's wrong? Oh, nothing. You have that conversation and then it's rough and then you might say, well, I'm through talking to you. I'm just going to back out like this and then I won't talk to you for 5 years. Or if you're in my family, this is 1996, right? A tough conversation needed to be had. And what happened to everybody in the family? We have backed away into silence.
Well, because another category was freeze, was it not? There's fight.
Fight or freeze,
Yes.
yeah, that where you would just freeze
You just
and
don't do anything, yeah.
you just
Don't do
basically
anything.
withdraw from all contact. So in your spousal relationships even, right? We'll see this where one might just chirp, where the other will just say, whatever, and just back off. Okay, so that could be silent. I hate the word violent that's down here. This is where you'll attack more, you're sarcastic, you will label people, you'll try to control the situation. If I'm dad in the farm family, I can be violent by actually controlling that no one gets to talk about the future of the farm. I can control it because I've shut it down. And I'm just going to say, we'll talk about that when the time is right. Violent could also mean that we get physical. In the farm sense, what it means is I'm in the farm shop, I get upset, and I start whipping tools around the farm shop. And then I probably break something that I shouldn't break. Or, the cat walks by you, and you try to punt the cat. across the yard, that kind of thing. So which are you? Which are you? You don't have to say this out loud, because all of us are something, right? What about the person like me who you don't know which way I'm gonna go? Because my sister didn't talk to me for a while, and I was just fine with that, because I'm a Marrison, right? But back in my younger days, if I got upset at my dad about things that were going on the farm, it wasn't silent, it was very verbal. And I would spout everything that I was thinking. At the time, it was probably very hurtful to my dad, but you can guess what my dad is. Very silent, right? So, which are you? And I will say I've struggled with this my entire life of figuring out how do I have good conversations. Now, I will be happy to come and talk to any of your family. I love tough conversations when they're with you. I love coming to families where brothers won't speak to each other, mom's yelling at them both, and they're cussing at each other, and the only way that they'll even talk is because I'm in the room. But let me tell you, I don't enjoy that when it comes to my own little world, right? But the blessing of my wife, Emily, she is really good about this. She understands who I am, so she will stop me from going into that silent mode. She'll actually help me stay in that pool to share meetings. So can you do everything that can help to keep you here, okay? So when they go through the book, if you go through this training, they talk about it's about fear. A lot of these, it's about fear of the conversation. It's unsafe for our ideas, or it's unsafe to share our feelings, and then we'll retreat out of it. So how can you handle that when there's crucial conversations? In the book, they'll talk about where's the resistance coming from. Sometimes it's a head issue. So some of you said, well, I don't know what to do. So maybe we said, well, Dad's not going to do an estate plan. He just refuses to do it. Well, why is he not doing the estate plan? Is it because he doesn't understand this gobbledygook with LLCs and easements and trust and buy-sell agreements and transferable on death, payable on death? They call it living will when it's really about pulling the plug. I don't understand all this stuff, right? So if it's about head issues, I don't know what to do, then how do I help a person that's caught in that? You provide them information. You provide them workshops, right? The other two start to get a little tougher. Heart issues, I need to feel good about the decision. It has to feel right. I can let it go. There'll be times that you just don't feel like the next generation is ready. They just don't do what they need to do to get it ready. And Steve's going to talk about next month about how you help prepare that next generation. Maybe it's a gut. I need to trust others with the change. I need to trust the plan. I need to trust the people involved. In families, there's a lot of gut issues when it comes to the in-laws. I might not, I have a family that they will not do anything, and this is one of my larger farms in my county. They won't do anything. And my read on this, I'm an outsider, right? My read on the situation is because of a couple of things that happened, Mom has no trust for the two son-in-laws that are in the business. And does she want that business to be left to two son-in-laws that she right now doesn't fully 100% trust? Comes down to trust. So that must mean that in that situation, we're not talking about estate plans and documents. We're working on rebuilding trust within that family so that they're all on the same trust page before they can go forward. So every one of your family is going to be a little bit different. I put a slide in there about everyone, I'm sorry, Dad, everyone complains about Dad, right? Dad doesn't want to do it. Well, why doesn't Dad want to do it? Maybe Dad's scared, because once you take the keys out of his hand, what is he?
No longer independent.
We have an older man who is, during COVID, he used to make all the cheese deliveries for the cheese house. But during COVID, the son-in-law and the daughter took away his keys, not because he was a bad driver, but because they didn't want him to get sick. Do you know what happened to his self-esteem and his self-worth through that whole process?
Downhill fast.
It went downhill, and he was not silent about it either. So sometimes you go downhill and go silent. He went downhill, but very verbal about it. Maybe his last idea was shot down. What do you do if you don't farm? His back's hurting. I mean, this physical part of this is a big deal. His love tank is empty. 5 love languages. Anyone read that? All right, we all have a love language. Dad's love tank might be words of affirmation where he really needs to hear positive comments, and nobody's given Dad any words of affirmation. And that might be what he needs. His time for sharing is different. He might have a different time process, is not a great reader, and can't process like you. Sometimes us kids like to bowl over our parents because we have a lot of information at our disposal. But then how can we bring that information as kids back to mom and dad in an easy, non-threatening manner? All right, there was a Farm Journal Legacy Project had an article about confronting conflict. It's about being open. It's about being honest. It's about being sensitive to others' feelings, about being kind. If I had to just put 2 words on this when I'm talking about tough conversations with family, it's just 2 words: be kind. So much if we were just a lot more gracious with one another and kind with each other, our conversations would be better. Are we taking the time to sit and talk? Seriously, are we doing this in today's fast-paced world? Do we take the time to talk? Just sit and talk like we used to. We all love technology, right? But this thing right here has why we think that we are connected. Not now, we're not connected at all. We may be less connected because of technology. Clarifying expectations and outlining what will happen, I'm going to talk about in the next slide. And do we have the ability just to say, I'm sorry and please forgive me? When we do something wrong, we're so prideful as people. Are we willing to say, yeah, this one's on me, I'm sorry? Do you think anyone in my family since 1996 has said, I'm sorry for how I've acted? Nobody. And apparently death doesn't change that either, because no one has done it, even though we've lost some key members. Crucial conversations, everybody's responsible for their own actions and reactions. One thing that we love as Americans, we love to control everybody around us. But who really do we ultimately control? There's only one person, right? That's us. So can we control how others hear the message that I'm giving? I can't control how they hear it, but I can do what?
Control how you give it.
I can control of how I
Receive it.
provide the information, right? And remind me when we get to the slide on Robert, I'll give you an example of how maybe you could do that. What can or cannot be discussed? There's certain things I know in families that you're just not going to jump into crucial conversations, sit everyone around the table and say, come on, let's talk about the rough stuff first. We're going to rip off the Band-Aid. No, maybe we need to take this. No, we need to take this in baby steps. Because if you're estranged and you haven't had some of those conversations, it's going to take a long time to get back to a place where you can talk about some of these tougher issues. Think about the statement, I wonder how I can achieve blank and avoid blank. So take a situation. I wonder how I can talk to mom and dad about the future of the farm without them clamming up and not saying one word for 5 years. My family, right? And not say anything. So think about what you want to express and then how can you avoid them. Because really the thing that you're trying to avoid in a tough conversation is the person leaving that area where they feel comfortable in their conversation. So really what you're trying to do is avoid them from getting mad at you, going quiet on you, about leaving this little circle that we're talking in. And there's sometimes when we start to go out of this conversation time, that instead of forcing people to re-engage the talk, that we just need to walk away and give it a week or something, and then come back. Be prepared for the worst case scenario. I'll talk about that in a few moments on one of these deer extension ones. And here's my soapbox. This is just David speaking. Parents don't owe your kids anything, right? When it comes to estates, my philosophy has, I've heard this early in my formation. Naked into this world we shall come, naked we shall leave. So we spend a lot of time about pulling in what? Assets. I don't know. We want all these things, right? We want to have all this money, but really, in the end, are you going to take it with you? So mine has always been on farm succession planning is you leave what you have to the person that's going to be the best steward of that property in the future. 4-H and FFA big down here? Okay. 4-H and FFA, I was involved in both of them. Just love those organizations because one thing, it provides a lot of leadership to our youth. One of the things it does is it talks about running business meetings. And that's one thing that we could incorporate into our family discussions just by having good business meetings about what's happening on the farm. And okay, so I'm farming all by myself. My wife and I are farming on ourselves. Does that mean I don't talk to anybody else about the kids, about the farm or the finances? Now my wife's goal is that once a month we sit down with a cup of coffee and we go over the financial statements, right? It's hard to do. That's her goal. Her goal also is that we have family meetings with the kids because they're at the age where they're running left, right, everywhere. And we try to calendar everything out. And then we have discussion. I want the kids to know, my stepson, he's in charge of the meat goat herd. This is his FFA project, right? I think most kids have no clue how much money their parents are making or not making on the farm. My niece thought for certain that the hay ground that I was renting off of my mom, that I was making a bundle off of it. And that I was ripping her grandmother off. So I heard that, so what did David do? Next time she was over, in a polite way, I said, hey, Heather, I want to show you the rented ground. I want to show you the spreadsheet of the hay that we made and how Grandma and I split the second and third cutting 50-50. I make the first cutting, and I want to show you my books on it and how much it cost to produce that. And it wasn't like, shut up, kid, because I'm not ripping off your grandmother. It was more about the power of information, right? A lot of the times, the brother and the sister that are not on the farm, they think that the son or daughter that is on the farm is just raking bank and that they're making big chunk of change. And the reason they think that is because they've never been taught any different, right? Because everybody thinks farmers are rich, right? Yeah, you're asset rich, but you're not cash flow rich, right? What can others see? I always say have professionals that can come in. If you had anybody watch the Undercover Boss show? What if someone was an undercover boss in your family? Wouldn't this be fun? If they came in and just to watch you and how your family operates? I mean, if you're not doing anything for Easter dinner and want me to come down and watch, I'd be happy to come in free for food, right? Do you have an advisory board that can give you advice on your farm? Have you asked your heirs what they think about what they want? I freaked my girls out because, okay, so you have to know the story. I'm remarried because my first wife passed away of cancer. So I have a daughter that is going to turn 30 on Valentine's Day. I have a 24-year-old daughter. Those are my girls. Then I have a stepson who's going to turn 16 and a stepdaughter is going to turn 14. So a pretty wide difference between them. But for my girls, when I was making that transition from Ashtabula to Coshocton County, of course, we're boxing up stuff, and the youngest has already moved out and gone to college, so the house is empty. But when they were both home, I said, okay, here's a piece of paper. I want you to walk around the house, and I want to tell you, I want you to write down everything that you would want from this house to be inherited. Anything that you want, write it down on this list. Because they're millennial and they're Z. This is going to kill boomer people, right? You know how much stuff they wanted?
Nothing.
You know how much of those antiques, the family heirlooms, those the millennials and the Zs want?
Nothing.
None of it. So though We have a pie safe. My wife's pie safe has been down from generation to generation. All of our kids look at that pie safe like it's a hunk of junk, right? And you know what they're going to do with it? They'll probably burn it right away, right? So that's one thing that I think boomers, Gen Xers, we have to come to grips with. The possessions that we have that are family heirlooms, they don't care. And I say that as, I'm doing a wide brush here, right? My wife and her brother are about 5 years apart. My wife keeps all the pictures, and Jesse, he throws everything away. He takes a picture of the picture to make it digital, and then he throws it away. They picked 3 things, back to my girls. 3 things from the entire house, 3 each. 2 of them were the same exact thing. Whoa. Messing with me. But I did we did some type of arty crafty kind of stuff in art class where we took our senior picture and then they took your graduation announcement and you kind of stuck it somehow on a candle. The butt ugly candle, right? They put your senior picture in that on. I would have thrown it away years ago, except for it had my picture on it, so I'm not throwing something away with my picture on it. I just can't do that. I should have burned it. And that was number 1 on my oldest daughter's list. Number 1. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I would have thrown it away. But because I asked, guess who gets the butt ugly candle? Number 1 on her list. She gets it. In fact, she can have it now if she wants. And then I have to go through and I have to figure out, okay, how do I go through that where they said the same thing, right? I think I got that thing figured out. But then it opens the door like, maybe there's something else that my kids don't want, but I could bless somebody else with it. That's a brother from another mother or somebody else. So take the time to ask. There's some of the books, 5 Love Languages. I would read that one. And I would read The Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti right away. Then if you have a crazy family, sounds like a couple of our tables might need to read the one in the middle. Dealing with the Elephant in the Room. Here's my book for the year. 2023. It is better to bite your tongue than eat your words by Mike Bechtel. That's pretty cool. These are all quick reads, just good reinforcement to talk about conversations. Now here's the ones that get a little bit tougher. Crucial conversation tools for talking when stakes are high. That's really good. There's Elaine Fraze, she is a coach from Canada. She has written a farm transition manual kind of thing about doing the tough things right and how to prevent communication disasters in family businesses. What I like about this book, and she's up in Canada, she does a really good job with farm families. There's worksheets that you go through and each of you in the family can ask questions. Then you can have a get-together, you eat dinner, and you can kind of go over them. And then the last one's Farming's In-Law Factor, which talks about the outlaws. Everything from uncle-in-law to mother-in-law to brother-in-law, you name it. Okay, so what are some other elephants in the room? My dad is on his 3rd marriage and has 9 kids between 4 different women. I'm the only one that is currently working on the farm. He has 4 kids under the age of 10 with his current wife. How do I know that my sweat equity is going to pay off considering his current wife is 15 years younger than he?
Have a conversation.
He got to marry his dad's ex-wife.
Very observant. This kid's 23 years old. In Western Ohio, I handed out pieces of paper and they all wrote their craziness on it. And he walked it up to me and handed it. He said, "Read this." And read it to everybody because they all know how crazy my dad is. So we had, first discussion was on birth control. But the second question was about his future, about sweat equity. How would you advise him? He wants to farm. Is the likelihood of that farm, is there potential for him not to be able to farm that farm?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So if I know that, and I'm 23 years old, who do I control? Do I control my dad? Oh, apparently not. Who does he control, though?
Himself.
The path that he is going to start blazing. This kid has an idea. and he has an idea of how he's gonna do it, and he bounced it off of me, and does his plan include anything with his dad's farm? No. If he gets his dad's farm someday,
Great.
gravy, right? Okay, my parents have told me that the farm will be split between myself and my 6 siblings when they die. Is this fair? P.S. I'm the only creature on that farm that actually helps. I think I have this on photo. Do I? No. Yeah, there it is. Remind me to go back one. So here's Robert. How many kids are there? 7.
7.
Isn't that cool? I made a pie equal divisions into 7. That took some talent, by the way. Just letting you know. Stole it from somebody. So $2.1 million estate farm in Ohio. So if we go back to that example, is this fair? Mom and dad are going to leave the farm between 7 ways. 2.1. Do the math. How much does each child get? $300,000, right? 2.1 divided by 7, $300,000. If Patty has a check here for $300,000 for each of you to take out of the room tonight, would you turn it down? Right? All right. So my first thing was, when you're doing transition planning, you got to have a goal for the farm. So in this instance, if they're going to split it equally, the goal for the estate plan for the farm was to do what?
Sell it.
To be equal, to sell. Does Robert want to farm it? So Robert wants to farm it. He has to come up with what? 1.8 million. So Robert walks in the bank at the age of 65, says, I need a $1.8 million loan. What does the banker tell him?
Sorry, give me 1.7 collateral.
Yeah. So what happens is there's an auction. Is this farm being farmed today? Yes. By somebody else down the road. And each of the kids chunked out at $300,000. Robert's farming days are over at the age of 65. Is the conversation different with good communication if Robert's mom and dad came to him as he started farming with him at the age of, okay, remember the other kid, 23. Let's say he was older. Let's say he was 35. He's proven himself. He's going to be a good farmer. And they came to him at the age of 35 and looked at him and said, Robert, here's our estate plan. We're going to split it between all of you kids. We want to bless each of you equally. Is it better for Robert to find that out at the age of 35 or the age of 65?
35.
Because then we have some ways here that Robert, usually what happens if Robert found out, he would bitch and moan and wear down his parents trying to get them to change this, right? But what should happen is Robert then plans his course for the future. When the farm down the road comes up for sale because they didn't come to this estate planning class,
Buy it up.
he could buy it up with the equity that he's been putting aside. Mom and dad could look at him and say, hey, Robert, we really want you to farm, but we want to split this equally. Well, then there's buy-sell agreements. There could be, your attorney might talk about putting in some type of business structure where all the kids will own it together. This is what they love to do in Ohio. And then they rent the land back to the son or daughter who stayed on the farm under that business structure. Or mom and dad look and say, you know what, we're going to help pay for a life insurance policy that kicks in to help you buy the land from your brothers and sisters when that happens. So at the age of 35, the estate planning discussion is sure a lot easier. There's a lot more parts that we can do with your attorney than if I'm here at the age of 65. But if the goal was to split it equally, then they did what they probably should do. If you're like my grandfather is saying, no, I'm not going to split it equally. I'm going to leave it for the one that is going to farm it. And if my goal is that, is it okay to let that person keep farming, but communicate it to these other heirs that I'm going to try to bless you in a different way? But most of us as kids, we're kind of snarly because we each want our $300,000, right? My wife and I are constantly fighting because she says that my parents are taking advantage of me as I'm working for less because the farm, I think, is going to be mine someday.
Your wife made it very smart.
Right? So, what does she do? So this is called sweat equity, right? Sweat equity means I'm going to have you work in this business, but know this business doesn't make a lot of money, but that's okay because we know you're going to put in extra hours, but we're going to give you a bigger percentage of the farm. So this happens all the time, right? Saying that. So mom and dad kind of agree with that. Or do they really agree with it? That's the question. And they go through life saying, work for less now, don't worry, it's going to be all years later. Then dad dies, mom gets older, mom starts to reflect on her mortality, and then mom goes into the attorney unbeknownst to the child that stayed behind, and then does what? Switches the estate back to be an equal because we want our child to love us, each of our children. And this is as we get older, as humanoids, we are more likely to go back into the attorney and take things that might have been done on percentage or proportionate differences and make them equal. So, how do you value for sweat equity? What if you in this room have been working for less with a promise? This is like, who's that dude, Wimpy? For a hamburger today, I'll give you two tomorrow, right?
Right.
So how do we account for this? You have any ideas? You went through the class. You should better know this, right?
Yeah. So in 1990, the farm is worth $100,000.
Yeah.
And one kid stays behind and works on the farm, and the other kid goes to school or doesn't work on the farm. In 10 years go by, and now the farm is worth $200,000. So that kid who stayed and worked has a 50% stake in the farm.
Mm-hmm.
So now the farm is now worth $200,000. The one kid gets a $100,000 inheritance, and then the two siblings split the remaining. So one kid gets $150,000, the other kid gets $50,000.
And that's called the balance sheet approach. You can tell Jim was in this class. We talked about the balance sheet approach. Like, if son or daughters come back in the business, you appreciate that business over time. How much of that growth became because of the work of the senior generation? How many of the junior generation? And then you allocate that appreciation on the balance sheet to each other. There's some issues with this, though. The issue is that did our balance sheet increase, the value of the balance sheet increase because of a true growth of equity in that farm? Or is it because everybody and their brother is moving to Campbell County and they've just run up the land price? Mm-hmm. So we can't use it. I always say be cautious with that, and we say that in the class because be cautious with that because was the growth because they really kicked tail when they were back on the farm? Or was it just because of all these forces outside the farm that have now increased its value from $100 an acre to, what is it here?
8 to 10.
Yeah.
8 to 10, that's it?
Some of them more, some of them less.
So ours right now, Upland
You're probably
Pasture
talking
Country,
25 where you're at.
13.5 is on upland stuff, which that used to be the value for river bottom ground where I'm, but it's about developmental pressure, right? So there's the balance sheet approach. You know, like you could cut down a tree, your neighbor could sneak over, cut down a tree, and you could bring out a certified forester, and they could look at that stumpage on that tree, and they could actually tell you how many board feet were in that tree. The same thing with this, using a good financial person, you can go back through balance sheets through time and kind of put some numbers to that. I will personally say I hate sweat equity. I hate when parents say, you're going to get paid less, we're going to give you more, unless you document it. So another way outside the balance sheet one would be, okay, now I have a spreadsheet. At the end of 2022, we all sit down as a family business, because we have a family business meeting, because we're in 4-H and FFA, right? So we sit down, and at that business meeting, we say, hey, Tom has put in, by our recollection, by our hours, has put in 1,000 extra hours this year that were uncompensated. What is that time worth per hour? Times it, keep it on a spreadsheet, and equalize it on the backside of the estate plan that that person gets more of the land, the value of land, based on some of the sweat equity that was sitting there. Okay, but you have to track it, and it has to be communicated. Because do you think your brother, who is the executor of the estate, when he finds that in the safe deposit box at the bank, you know what the brother's going to do? Take a little match out. It's never existed, right? And you hope that doesn't, but we know what happens when people die, right? I would prefer people to be paid what they're worth up front, and then compensate that way. That way you can be more equal. So, sweat equity, this is a conversation that I have, and did I? Yeah, I hit them. Okay. This is probably a slide ago. I think I moved the slides on you here before I came over here tonight. Tips for transition management. No, it's another slide that I moved ahead of time. Some things for the next generation, and I want to say that Steve is going to talk about these more, but here's some of David's tips. If you're bringing back the next generation, let them get experience somewhere else. Have good job descriptions. If they come back, give them responsibilities and let them move up in the responsibilities. One of the best that I've seen is two brothers farm together, and they're trying to bring some of the kids back. And when the kids come back into this operation, they hand them a job description. So they're going to start here. Once you've gone through your annual review and you're doing all these really well, we go pull the next job description out. Once they have done that job description, because remember what you're doing is trying to train them to do what? Be the total manager for the entire, right? So you got to build their capacity. And then you get another one. But here's the cool thing they do. Okay, so after 5 years, and you've done X, Y, and Z here, you've been here and showed us you're dedicated for 5 years, and they know this up front, the brothers gift corporation shares to the next generation. And then as they gift them those corporation shares, they look at and these are cousins that are now back in the operation, they say, you're eligible now to not only be given these shares, you now are eligible to buy some of our shares. So not only are they giving shares, but they're giving the chance for the kids to buy some equity using the money that they earn from working there. They use their equity, and then that helps when they're having those conversations at home. There is that plan in place for them to eventually take over that business completely. If your kids come back, let them do their own thing. And don't help them. Make them go to the bank and get the operating loan. Double interest this year, right? Make them go decide what the seed that they need, or the genetics that they want to buy for the cattle. Oh, and by the way, they want to use your stuff to brush hog and make hay. Pull out the custom rate chart and charge them for it. For that they're going to do on their own. Let them go through that whole business process. And then share, and share. Develop those relationships with those people that you are dealing with, like your lenders. These are 4 questions. If you have a son or a daughter that you're thinking about, taking over on the farm, which I hope if you're here, that's what you're thinking about, some of you. These are questions that you can ask. So next time you drive to town, us introverts like silence, but break that silence and start asking these questions. Hey, if you had to take over the farm today, what would you be the most concerned about? What don't you know how to do? And give them time to process that. And if they don't have an answer for you right then because they like to process it, you say, remember that question because I'm coming back to you in 2 weeks. I'm going to ask you that question again. If Dad does this to his son, the son would probably be floored, right? Because Dad would never ask these questions, right? What changes need to be made for you to have a continuing interest in the farm? Okay? Some of you have kids that don't want anything to do with the farm, right? Maybe a few of you. We'll have that conversation. Hey, I'm trying to decide what to do with the farm. What interest do you have in it? In our county, the kids want to keep the land, and they want to be able to come back and put a cabin on it, and they want to hunt on it, and they want to be able to come and stress relief on it. So, okay, I'll leave it to my kids for that. And oh, by the way, and then I'm going to teach them how to be a landlord on the backside to rent out the farm ground, right? What are your weaknesses that need to be addressed? And if I have weaknesses as a kid, how do I get some training? What's your expectation for the control to take over the business? Is there expected time? Is it on death? Or you're saying, no, I'm going to come back and I want to take over the cattle operation now. Because we understand, I used to think 50 was old. I used to look at people who are 50 and say, boy, you're like one step away from the grave, right? Once you go over that threshold, 50 is like the new 30. It's like, here we go. Here's my tips for transition management. You won't hear these from Steve. These are Ohio true ones. How many days are in 2023? Yeah, it's not leap year, right? 365. So if I'm trying to school my kids up to take over, to manage, be a landlord, take over the farm, do whatever, 365 days a year, I want you to bug the crap out of your kids each and every day, because you're going to teach them one thing a day. One thing a day, you're going to teach them about that farm, whether they want to or not. And then if my kids are smart, they are going to do what?
Teach it if you listen.
They're going to teach your kids. I heard that. But if I'm son or daughter, then I'm looking at dad and say, hey, dad, and you ask them an off-wall question, one a day. And then if you do the math, I'm from Ohio, so I can't do that math. 365 times 2 is whatever, 700 and some, right? At the end of the year, because I tell farmers, can you really write down everything that you do in a year on the farm? I mean, it's tough, right? Because you're too busy working. But could you imagine at the end of the year if your kids knew 750 new things about that farm? Can you imagine that? I think about this, I'll share with this. After my dad was gone, we had some issues in the house, in the farmhouse with the septic system. Because the renters I had were just shoving grease down the line, right? I had no clue where the septic tank was. It's somewhere out there, right? That's a song, right? Somewhere out there. But then, as I'm thinking, where the heck is this stupid thing? I was mad because it was like, I don't have time to deal with this. And a little voice said, don't drive the tractor by the lilac bush, David. Don't drive the tractor by the lilac bush, David. And I'm thinking, like, as a kid, you're thinking, my grandpa must really, really love that lilac bush. He doesn't want me to accidentally run it over. Well, what was right on the backside of the lilac bush? How come no one freaking told me that? Instead we speak in code, right? Don't drive by the lilac bush. Maybe the farm dog was buried there. I don't know. But guess where it was? There it was. So now I have a farm notebook. And I actually took a tape measure out from the corner of the house and put it out there. And I wrote down the measurements. I snapped a picture of when we dug up to where the little hole is that you go in. The clean out, thank you. And I measured it all, took a picture of it, and I have a farm notebook. I took that page and I slipped it in it. So then whoever takes over the farm, if they want to know where the septic tank, the instructions are there. Oh, and by the way, who is the person that can come help you, assist you with it? When we looked, we were having some issues with the milk house drain that went from the milk house out to the road. We had to dig up a line to fix a tile line. Well, we didn't find the tile line. We found the electric line, because, you think the electric comes to the barn, then it runs to the house. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Where did my dad take the electric? Out in a half moon shape in the yard, over the driveway, and into the corner of the house. Why? Well, I had to think. If you stood where the electric line is and looked like this, as I'm where you're sitting, used to be 2 old fuel tanks, above ground fuel tanks that sat there, and he didn't want to have to mess with the fuel tanks to put the electric line in, so he just went right around them. And we found them accidentally. Well, my cousin found him accidentally. He was expendable, right? So that's okay. But those are the things, don't you wish that if you taught your kids those kind of things? And then the last one is this cute little animal. Okay, so I was teaching in northern Ohio, and they said, that's the cutest little gerbil I've ever seen. That's a possum, right? What does a possum do?
Plays dead.
Plays dead. So how do you know if your kids are ready to take over the farm? They're not playing dead. All right, so I want you to think, what's the busiest time on your farm? Is it haying season? Is it calving season? I can tell you on a farm, it's going to be the first 10 days of March. Because every doe is going to kid right then. All right, so that's like not fun time for us. So the time that's the busiest, I want as parents you to take your phone out of your pocket, you leave it on the counter, the table, because they could break into your house when you're not there anyways, right? So you leave it there with a note that says,
On vacation.
we're on vacation, we don't know how long, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4 weeks. We're just going to relax a little bit. Good luck with the farm. See you when we get back. Now, some of you will look at me like I'm crazy because the barn would burn down, all the cows would be sold. Heck, the whole place might be sold by the time you get back, right? But if you can't sit there and say, you know what, I think the kids could do this, and leave with those 2 weeks, then that means it comes back to me to do what as the senior generation. I gotta get them ready, right? I gotta get them ready. And I'll make point of why that is, but they're my cute little possum. So there's some elephants that I thought of, and because sometimes people are not, they don't want to bring it up in a crowd because they have neighbors here. What happens when you don't trust your daughter or son-in-law? Did you say shoot them? Brutal. Just make them know who's boss, right? All right, so one of the things that when you do with estate planning is that you are going to have to be completely honest with the attorney that you're sitting across from. And number one is all of us in this room will have a different estate plan, and we better. Because if you go into an attorney and they say, I got the perfect plan for you, you know what you should do? Get up and leave. Yeah. So they're going to craft a plan that works for you. However, this is not the time to keep secrets. Your attorney has that privileged conversation with you. You tell them everything that you're worried about. When I did mine, I thought, oh, I was going to do this, this, and this. It was going to be pretty easy. And then I went in there and told them everything that I was concerned about. These are the things that I keep up at night, right? So I give you mine. I'm remarried. My girls are older. I have 2 stepchildren that are minors. If I get in an accident and I die in Ohio, the way I have it set up, all my stuff goes to, the farm stuff goes to the trust, but everything else goes to my wife, right? So then she inherits what I have and goes on and things are good. She's, very despondent because I'm not around anymore, right? And then tragically, yeah, I said they're going to have a party when I die. I got that one planned out. Something tragic happens to her, right? Before she could make some alterations to her plan. Under the state of Ohio, all of her wealth and assets would then go, which were mine, right? Part of mine came to her, and then she dies, boom, boom, who does it go to? Her 2 children who are minors. You see where this is going? Yeah. All right, she divorced her first husband for a reason, right? Who gets to be in control of the minor's children until they're 18? Does that keep you awake? Yeah. I thought that one day baling hay. I said, holy crap. And then that was an elephant in the room. Now, I told my attorney, I said, this is only a concern from now until the age of 18, right? But, when's my day? So it's in my trust, I got it covered. Because I sat there and told my attorney, hey, I'm worried about this. He said, oh, that's not a problem. Here, this is what we do. So all those things, you have those discussions. What happens if you don't think your successor has what it takes to run the operation?
You don't leave it though.
Because sometimes the child who comes back to the farm, are they the real one that should be there?
Not always.
Not always, right? So every good idea that I have gets shot down by mom and dad. This is for the children. Will I ever get compensated for the sweat equity we talked about there? The senior generation refuses to discuss the future and refuse to slow down. I think that's a big one, right? That we don't want to discuss. This is where, do you think you're going to, okay, you were supposed to remind me then, Robert, remember Robert, 7 kids? So maybe they don't want to talk about it or slow down. In that situation, could Robert go into his parents and say, well, you've done the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. You're splitting this farm between the 7 of us. There ain't no way I'm going to be able to farm this. Where does that get conversation have with his parents? How do they react to it? How do you think?
Shut down.
However they will move away out of safe, they'll go, right? What if they say, hey, Dad, like the guy I talked about, we're taking your keys away. You can't drive the tractor anymore. Does that have an impact on how Dad reacts back?
Yep.
So could Robert go in a place that, remember, we only control who? Ourselves. So could Robert go to his parents and say, Mom, Dad, I want to talk to you about my goals for the farm. My goal for this farm is that I want to farm it. I'm blessed that I'm here to be farming it with you. In fact, I really want my son and daughter to be part of this as well. And here's what I'm scared about. And this is what I'm thinking about. This is what really concerns me, and I'm very fearful. And my fear is that I'm going to have to go get the money to buy out my brothers and sisters, and I don't think I can do it. Can you help me with that? Is that a different conversation than saying, Mom and Dad, you are just freaking stupid for splitting between the 7 of us? So in any of these tough conversations, all we can do is say, express in a loving way how we feel. Now, I can say how I feel. You might not have to like it, but at least I can express to you how I feel. So in that instance, you're like saying, hey, Dad, this is what I should have done for my grandpa. Grandpa, I don't know how to cut a land my grandpa plowed. We plowed still up there. Plowed. He was the one who opened all the lands up in the fields, cutting the dead furrows open, right? Because only Grandpa could do it the straightest, right? So instead of me complaining about my grandpa behind his back, you know what I should have done? Hey, Grandpa, can you teach me how to do this? Because I'm scared that I won't be able to do it like you do it when you're not here someday. Do you think he would have shown me?
Yes.
Yeah, but you're a stupid kid. You don't know what to do that, right? Mom's in the early stages to mention she insists on working in the tasting room every weekend. This was happening to one of our wineries. She wouldn't even remember to take the people's money when she gave them wine. So not only was it costing their business, but a lot of money. How do you get Mom, who started the winery, how do you get her out? Can you transition her in a different way? Our hurts, our hang up, our habit that no one wants to discuss. We all have some of that in our family, right? All right, just a reminder, there's the Planning for the Future of Your Farm webinar if you want to do that. So now, questions do you have? Dear OSU Extension.
I got one. What does CFAES mean?
Oh, we sustain life. Okay, I work for the Ohio State University, right? Because we're pompous, we're arrogant, and we think that we are better than everybody else. So let me get that out, which we're not. Most of us extension folks are pretty nice people. CFAES. We used to be called the College of Agriculture, right? So now we are the College of Food, Agriculture, Environmental Sciences. So CFAES stands for the College of Food, Agriculture, Environmental Sciences. To us old people, we're the College of Ag. I was an Ag Econ major, right? Ag Economics. Now they call it Agriculture, Environmental, and Development Economics. It's Ag Econ. They don't even call Ag Ed to be an Ag teacher anymore, Ag Ed. But you'll notice on our front slide, I covered it, but our tagline is, oh no, I took the picture away completely. I'll probably get fired for that. It's supposed to say, we sustain life. Because if you hear a College of Ag, we sustain life. I can answer that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two arms. One's a regular and one's a lawyer arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know why it's a lawyer arm?
Why is it a lawyer arm?
Because it's crooked.
Just like the 911 in West Virginia that you told me earlier. Good. What other questions or horrible jokes do you have? All right, we'll go, Tim.
So, the idea of having or increasing or starting family communication is a good one in theory, right? I mean, we all want to do that at
Right.
some point. Yeah, we got to have that conversation soon. But, I would like the group to recognize at any moment that we could be struck with an illness that's going to only give us a week to live, 6 months to live. At any moment, we could leave to hit this library, be hit by a bus. So, although it's good to know it's necessary to have this conversation in theory, really we should have these conversations soon, as soon as we can.
Yeah, you're stepping right into one of the things I'm going to say right at the end, Jim, about that. Did you have a question? And then I'm going to hold and tag on that.
You was talking about your dad took over the farm.
Yes.
And his brother to talk to him. Did they get any payback
Yes.
out of the farm?
Good question. This is what befuddles David in my mind. When my uncle left the farm in 1970, so I would have been 2 years old, there was a big falling out because of the spouses, really. My grandfather bought his share of the business out and then paid for the farm that he lives on to this day and gave him half of the breeding herd. Okay, then my dad got to stay on the farm. My uncle was younger, so Uncle Bob was never part of that. And then when he passed away, the youngest uncle brother got my great uncle's farm. My dad got the main farm, and then my other uncle, because he was bought out of the business back in the 70s, it was more of the equal division of some of the personal stuff. And I think a lot, and he got paid a payment of money. So he didn't get wrote out.
Yeah.
So
They all got a portion, they got something.
it all came back to it should have been a third, and a third.
It was, okay.
It wasn't a
Oh, it
third,
wasn't a third.
third. But that's how it was perceived that was the only way to do it.
Yeah.
So. Now, and can't repair what did. We can only go forward.
Are there any big disadvantages to setting up a trust?
Is there any big
Disadvantages.
disadvantages to setting up a trust? Okay, so I'll talk about some, but then let the lawyers do the rest.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot here.
So trust. Mechanism, you can go through a will-based plan, you can go through a business structure plan, you can go through a trust plan. The biggest advantage to a trust is that you can be really nimble. It stays out of the probate court. You can be really nimble, and your if, then, but statements, like I'm trying to account for some weird situations like I got, it's easier to do that in the mechanism of a trust. Everyone's going to have a plan that their lawyer believes is going to fit their situation the best. For me, it was a trust because it allowed me to do some things that I needed to do to protect people from themselves. The disadvantage that you're often going to hear about a trust is that it costs more on the front side to develop it. So instead of doing a quick will, which is not going to be a lot of money, the trust up front could cost you in the thousands of dollars. But where you will probably see the benefit is when the trust is executed upon your death, that there'll be less fees on the backside. Then you get into the whole apple of there's differences in trust, revocable versus irrevocable. Irrevocable, once you write it, it can never be changed. And that's with the Medicaid kind of discussion that you would have. Revocable trust, I can change it anytime. I wrote mine in 2015. In 2022, I went back and revised my trust because things have changed. So you will always, anybody who does a plan, a will, a trust, or anything like that, and then puts it onto the shelf and doesn't look at it for 30 years, that's very unwise.
Yes.
Every couple of years, or any change in a major change that happens within the family structure, you go back and you revisit it. So, yeah. Good question. Your speaker from last spring, or was,
Yeah.
he would be able to jump right into that.
I mean, I realize I put you on a spot there.
Well, I won't tell you what to do, but
Yeah,
a trust gives you a lot of ability to be flexible in creating and overcoming family dysfunctionality. You can do that in a will too, but then the will is very public for the entire world to see. I have some crazy things in mind. My lawyer looked at me and he said, yep, that's okay, you can do it. I just have some crazy things that I put in there. Okay, trigger, what will be your trigger families in place? Okay, I won't do my job. I started out tonight by saying, what about a pebble? That I want each of you to do what? Put something in your shoe on the way out of here, because you're not going to remember who David is. We're going to remember something that made you feel uncomfortable. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions I want you to consider as you contemplate what you're going to do here. What's going to be the trigger for you to get your plan in place? So the first is preparing your farm, family, and yourself. Jim, you couldn't have led into this any better than what you just did. So if you only had 7 weeks to live, what are the most important things that you would need to do to have your farm continue successfully? Okay? You know, 7 weeks. So let me give you David's personal story. May 1st, 2010. My dad called me from the hospital. I was milking cows, said, get your sisters home. Bring them to the hospital. He went in the hospital. I didn't even know he was in the hospital. I thought he was home sleeping, right? He sleeps till 9 a.m., right? He was in the hospital, went up there the night before, didn't even know he was there, got a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. So I asked you about the busiest time in your family's operation, May 1st. That's when cows are going out on pasture, we're starting to put crops in the ground, we're making forage crops, and Dad has cancer. Mom and Dad don't have much planning done, so now we have 7 weeks to learn all those things that I needed to learn. Including where are all the crazy property boundaries on all this land that we own? Because they're all the old rock and fence posts and that kind of crap, right? He had to take me around to do that. There are so many things that I didn't know how to do. So 7 weeks to get your farm ready. Farm, then I'm going to go down, this is going to get harder as we go. If you're diagnosed with cancer that has no cure, what are the most important things that you would need to do for your family to continue? So this is you know, your family. How do you get your family to go on without you? So the good Lord thought David needed a lot of lessons. 6 months after my dad passed away, there's my late wife, Jamie, was diagnosed with multiple myeloma cancer. Leukemia cancer. They looked at Jamie and said, you're going to fight this for 4 to 5 years. True to their diagnosis, that's what she valiantly fought that, but then passed away after 5 years. So how do you prepare? So there's Gidget, there's Annalise, now they're age 30 and age 24. How do you prepare your family for all those special moments when the light of their life, their mother's not there? So that's just the kids. How do you as a spouse go on? I never realized how much my mom missed my dad until it happened to me. And everyone's grumpy when they're parents when they lose their spouse and can't understand why mom and dad just don't get on with it until it happens to you. And then you can kind of appreciate it. So how do you get your family ready to operate without you? And then the last is, if your plane crashed today, you said this, right? You got hit by a bus though. You get hit by a bus on the way home. Are you ready to die? So I put a plane up here because this was 2010, 2015. December of 2016, I was taking a little flight out of Columbus, Ohio to go down to North Carolina to teach a bunch of dairy producers on this subject. And it was a nasty night. Have you ever sat on a plane and thought about the technical competency of the dude that's de-icing the wing? Have you ever thought of that? You look out, did he get an A in de-icing or did he get a C? Because I really want the guy that got an A in de-icing, right? So I was having that conversation in my brain that night, looking out. It was a nasty night. And then we take off. But there was nothing wrong with the wings, I'll tell you. Instead, 2 rows behind me, so 2 seats behind me, I look out the back, I hear this bang, burst. I look out my window, the right engine is completely on fire, spitting fire, flames everywhere. And then the plane, because we're still ascending, right? The plane starts this, and I'm an economist, so I'm saying, 50% chance this plane is getting back down on the ground, and I'm not dead. You know what happened, right? We landed. I did my 50% calculation, and then I sat there. I learned some new swear words off the young lady in front of me. She had a bunch of them I'd never heard before. I saw these airline stewardess walking up and down the aisle and just doing amazing things. But for me, the more enlightening thing for me was how I reacted. And I hope that each of you get one of those moments in your life where you go like, oh, that's how I react in the face of death. For me, it was very comforting to know that I was in a good place of where I was and who I am and what I believe in. So my question to you is, have you done some of that soul searching for? I know COVID showed we are scared to die. We are scared to die as humans. Should we be though? So I'd ask you to be thinking about that. I will tell you also, if you almost die in a plane crash, they will give you all the free beer and pizza they can give you. That's memo. That's what Delta did for us. Yeah, there are people, and I had to get back on that plane because, by God, I wasn't missing my teaching assignment the next day. It was a full plane when we took off, and I would say there was 10% of the people got on the next plane that pulled up to take us out that night. There'll probably be some people that never fly again after that experience. But the cool thing is the pilot said it did exactly what the model said it should do. Like they practice for this stuff, right? And the pilot was all giddy when he got off, like, yeah, I did it just like it was supposed to. So he was just enthralled that his training had him prepared for it. So thank goodness you were my pilot.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave you with these, and then I'll stick around and answer any type of the questions that you have. Procrastination is not avoiding a task, not just avoiding a task. It's also avoiding the emotions that accompany an uncomfortable task. The measure of one's character is not what they get from their ancestors, but what they leave their descendants. And I still find the days too short for all the thoughts I want to think, all the walks I want to take, all the books I want to read, and all the friends I want to see. 3 really, really cool farm succession kind of things about you don't know if the bus is coming, you don't know if the plane's coming, you don't know if cancer diagnosis is coming. None of us know what that is, right? But I'll tell you what happened was my mom went in to get my dad's suit jacket to take to the funeral home to bury him in. Inside the left pocket, right here, were these 3 quotes written in my dad's handwriting at his very last school board meeting. So isn't that kind of cool? Dad left us a message. Dad left a message knowing that this is what David does, that you can do this. There are tools out there, UK Extension, Ohio State Extension, you name it. Some great ag attorneys that are out there that can help you with this. But, as Jim said, you never know when the bus is coming. So it's encouragement that the days are short. So if you can do anything this winter, a beautiful time to be here because now you have all winter to have these conversations, right? And I want you to think about when it comes to crucial conversations, is it really, really worth it not to be in the pool of shared meaning with those people that are around you? All right? Did that make you feel uncomfortable? I hope it did, because, but I will tell there is beauty on the backside of grief. There is pure beauty of, I would not change my life for anything that's happened to me because of just everything that has come off the backside of that. I am very, very grateful for those experiences. If there's any way that I can help you, of course, there is my contact information. There's my phone number. There's my email. Wherever I am, that is where I am. I don't have an office. I just, wherever I am in the state of Ohio, or if I'm West Virginia, or if I'm in Kentucky, thank you for inviting me down here. But if you have any follow-up questions, or if you reflect and think you want to ask some questions, don't hesitate to give me a buzz. Actually, we'll answer, right, Jim? So
Oh, absolutely.
I will answer.
Very, very, very responsive.
All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I turn it over to you.
Well, I just one parting remark was if you liked his presentation and you'd like to hear more, his 6-hour presentation is really good. It goes a little bit deeper, a little bit broader. There is a fee, I think it's $100.
75.
$75, and you just hand your receipt of payment to the Conservation District, and they'll pay you back. So it's a good deal. It's a good seminar.
And for that, the first person, the primary registrant from the family gets a booklet of all the handouts. Everybody else from the family that wants to enroll gets the connection details for free, and all the stuff is online. The videos are posted online, so if you want to watch them again, you can do that. But it's a one price for your entire family. So we had some families with kids in 5 different states that all watched it together. So it's a way to get your kids in on the action without them leaving their place of residence. So
Good stuff. Thank you. So thank you all for coming. Don't forget, next month we have another speaker, Mr. Isaacs from UK. He'll talk more about farm preservation. It's down at the Environmental Center. Probably Patty will notify all of you.
We'll be sending postcards.
Postcards, and it's on the district website. And thank you all again. And drive safe going home.
don't get hit by a bus.
Don't get hit by a bus. Have a conversation. Avoid that.